Angie Dodge was a bright and outgoing 18-year-old woman living on her own for the first time in Idaho Falls, Idaho. She had recently graduated from high school and taken a job at a local beauty supply store. Friends described her as cheerful and deeply trusting, with a warm personality and a love of poetry and music. Angie had just moved into her first apartment in June 1996, ready to begin adult life. On the morning of June 13, 1996, Angie failed to show up for work. Concerned co-workers contacted her family. Her mother, Carol, asked a neighbor to check on her. When the neighbor entered the apartment, he found Angie murdered in her bedroom. The scene was brutal. She had been sexually assaulted and stabbed multiple times in what appeared to be a frenzied attack. Police launched a massive investigation. They collected DNA from the scene and sent it for testing. The profile belonged to a male, but no matches were found in any existing databases. In the absence of a suspect, police focused on a 20-year-old man named Chris Tapp. He had been hanging around Angie's social circle and had prior minor run-ins with the law. Chris was interrogated repeatedly over the course of several weeks. Though he initially denied involvement, he eventually confessed, claiming he had been present during the attack but had not wielded the knife. His confession was inconsistent and changed multiple times, and it was made without physical evidence linking him to the scene. Nonetheless, prosecutors pursued charges. In 1998, Chris Tapp was convicted of rape and murder and sentenced to 30 years to life in prison. Carol Dodge, Angie's mother, attended every court hearing and never stopped questioning the outcome. Over the years, she grew convinced that Chris had been coerced and that the real killer was still out there. She lobbied investigators to re-examine the DNA evidence and consult new forensic techniques. In 2017, after nearly 20 years behind bars, Chris Tapp was released from prison when DNA testing definitively excluded him as a contributor to the crime scene. A few years later, in 2019, genetic genealogy led investigators to a new suspect, Brian Dripps, who had lived just across the street from Angie at the time of the murder. Dripps was arrested and confessed in detail. He said the attack had not been planned, but that he entered Angie's apartment while under the influence of drugs. He admitted to assaulting and killing her, acting entirely alone. In 2021, Dripps pleaded guilty to rape and murder and was sentenced to life in prison. Carol Dodge publicly apologized to Chris Tapp and continued to advocate for justice reform, including stronger safeguards around police interrogations. Angie's story became a tragic example of both wrongful conviction and the persistence of truth through science and a mother's love.